They have already become our friends. Jaap Scholten and a group of courageous Dutch writers, photographers, artists and rugby players who come regularly to Ukraine to bring vehicles to the Ukrainian soldiers. We have already had conversations with some of them. You can find the links in the description. This time we did a big event at PEN Ukraine and UkraineWorld to talk about inspiration, courage, fatigue, freedom and the need to act. You're listening to the Explain Ukraine podcast. The event was held on January the 30th, 2025 at the premises of PEN Ukraine in Kyiv. Our guest, Jaap Scholten, a Dutch author, anthropologist and founder of protectukraine.nl, Tommy Wieringa, an acclaimed Dutch writer and ambassador of Protect Ukraine, Maurits Chabot, a writer and historian, co-author of the book for the National Book Week in the Netherlands 2025, Eddie van Wessel, a prize-winning and internationally respected photographer who has independently traveled to Ukraine since 2022 documenting the ongoing war. The event was moderated by Anastasia Hersemchuk, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of UkraineWorld. Protect Ukraine is a Dutch NGO focused on supporting the Ukrainian armed forces on the front lines with defensive materials. Explain Ukraine is a podcast by UkraineWorld, and my name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I am UkraineWorld's Editor-in-Chief. You can support our work at patreon.com/UkraineWorld. We really need your support now because our media is increasingly relying on crowdfunding. You can also support our volunteer trips to the frontline areas where we help both soldiers and civilians, bringing mostly cars for soldiers and books for civilians. You can support our trips via PayPal, ukraine.resisting@gmail.com. So let's begin.
We are very happy to be here. And next to me here is Eddie van Wessel. He is actually not a writer, but he is the very, very best. How do you call this photographer? You don't call yourself a war photographer, I saw. How do you call it yourself?
Like I wouldn't say humanitarian photographer, because that would say I bring only aid or help. But I think I describe the life of people under extreme, difficult conditions. And Ukraine is, well, the perfect environment. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. But he is actually the Robert Capa of the Netherlands. He's an incredible photographer, and but he's the first time with us. And next to me is Maurits Chabot. It's the third time. Maurits is because we always have a lot of writers with us, but Maurits is actually the youngest that we bring, and. Well, it is. I cannot say so much about your writing. You have to do that yourself. But he is amazing to have on a trip. He brings so much good energy, and he's a true gentleman, actually.
I can only disappoint from now on.
And then there's Tommy Wieringa, and it's your sixth or your seventh trip. And Tommy is very important for us because we have an organization that's called Protect Ukraine, and Tommy is by far the most well-known author of the Netherlands of this era, and what is very good for us, all television programs always fight to have Tommy in the program. And that helps so much to get people helping us, and Tommy is also writing a lot about it. He just published a book, Convoy, about the convoys, and I think together the two of us we publish quite a lot of articles in Dutch newspapers and give interviews, and I think we have quite an influence on Dutch public opinion, and we are Tommy is a honorary Cossack, but we are also and I think that is, I think perhaps for all four of us, we we feel in some way very Ukrainian.
And this is Jaap. I'll introduce you then. This is Jaap Scholten. He is our hetman. He's the one who started Protect Ukraine direct after the full-scale war started. He started to bring generators, access, everything to the border and across the border for the energy supply. So he started to help straight away, day one after the full-scale invasion. And then he had this brilliant idea of bringing writers in who can actually spread the word. And that's when he invited me, and I couldn't say no. Of course, when Jaap asks you something, it's not so much of a question, but an order. And he wrote a wonderful book about it. The title is
3 bags of ladies' clothes and a sniper.
Oh yeah, that's his book.
The first time I went to Ukraine, I went one time in March 2022, but in May 2022 I went to Chernihiv to bring aid there. Just, I think 3 weeks or something after it was liberated from the surrounding by the Russians. And I took back with me 3 bags of ladies' clothes and a sniper. An American sniper who was working with your army, and that's the title of the book. Yeah.
So this concludes the introduction. And who are you?
I'm the one who is going to moderate this conversation today, and I'm really happy that I'm here and I have this opportunity to talk to you and to find out about your experiences and connections to Ukraine. So the very concept around which evolves our conversation is compassion. And if you saw the announcement of our event, we cited Susan Sontag's words about compassion that should be translated into actions, not to disappear, not to be in vain. And when I was thinking about our discussion today, I also stumbled upon other words which are very thought-provoking. These are words by a Jewish religious leader and scholar, Hillel the Elder, and he said, "If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when?" And these two concepts, these two lines, they made me think about your motivation. What brings you to Ukraine? What motivates you to help? What is your inner driver? Is it moral compass? Is it set of values? Is it compassion? Is it interest? Is it combination of everything? So what are your personal experiences that helps you make links with Ukraine and that motivate you to come here and help? And let me, this is the question to all of you, but let me start with you, Mr. Scholten, because you initiated the initiative Protect Ukraine. So how this idea appeared, and how did you start this initiative?
Yeah, I think like many things in life, it was in some way accidental. I have a niece who is married to a Ukrainian man, and she called me very early, like 6 o'clock in the morning of the 25th, just so when the full-scale invasion was 1 day old, and she asked, "Can you help his family to get out of the country?" And they are on the way from Kiev to Hungary. I live in Hungary, and I'm Dutch, but I live in Hungary, and then I said, sure. So I went to the border to pick them up. And on the border, I was waiting for 4 days because in the end it took a long time to cross the border and to get to the border because they had all kind of... I give a long answer because then... And when I was at the border, it was incredibly cold. And I was waiting till late in night there because I hoped all the time that they would be coming. And all the refugees, everybody who was crossing the border, in some way, all these people seemed very lost. So they were there with one little bag with clothes and with small children and old people and a lot of women with children who were very cold. And at the other side of the border, there were really thousands of people waiting the whole night. And the whole feeling was so depressed, and everybody was so wanhopig. What's wanhopig? Desperate. So it was desperate at that border. And then there arrived a little van, a rusty van, with a very young girl jumped out with red hair. And she was in her 20s. And she opened the back of the van, and she had boxes with food and with dekens. What's in dekens? Blankets. With blankets, and she started to hand them out and to put over the shoulders of the people who were there. And after like 40 minutes, one of the soldiers started to help her, and another policeman, and the whole feeling of this border post changed. And I was so impressed by that young girl who was doing that alone, and she could speak both Hungarian and either Russian or Ukrainian, so I thought then I should do the same. And at the same time, what I was annoyed by, that in Dutch media and in many media in the world, everything was about refugee and like a refugee crisis. And I thought it was like we had only one problem, and that there were a lot of refugees. And I thought we have another problem, and that are the Russians. And then I thought you should focus on trying to solve that problem. So I decided on that border that you should help the Ukrainian armed forces. And that's what we focus on completely. And I never done anything like that before, but I started to help, and I collected money from friends, and I was buying helmets from the Italian army, and were buying things, and we were bringing them to Mariupol, not I myself, but with connections in Ukraine. And then I met a lot of people, and it was growing and growing. And then also the people here in the back that are sitting there are Dutch guys. So the whole organization grew bigger and bigger. But we all the time, we are with a lot of writers, a lot of rugby players, and a lot of engineers, and we do very simple things. So it's not very complex what we do. We collect money, we are in connection with the military, and we buy this stuff and we bring it. And that is what I see is in the Netherlands, there are many people who are feeling that they cannot do anything, who are desperate, and the war is so horrible, and they don't do a fuck. And then to do these simple things, that's working. And I think that everybody of us who are doing these things, we feel like it works. And the Ukrainians, in the end, they will win. And I think this whole war is about stamina and willpower. And I think the Ukrainians show us so much willpower. And you are an inspiration to, I think, the whole of Europe. I mean, to everybody who's open to it and not stupid. So that's basically, so I'm inspired by the Ukrainians. I think this war is essential for your country, but I think for whole of Europe. And that's my motivation. And what this quote of Susan Sontag, that when do you have it here?
Like very briefly, compassion should be translated into actions, otherwise it withers away.
It will withers, it withers, yeah. And I think that, so with me it never withers, and I be very inspired by all the Ukrainians, and I'm very happy that we can do this. That's it.
I think you started your answer with like it was accidentally, Jaap, and that very much resonates with me. In my case, it started with two brothers, in fact, Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko. I'm pretty sure you all know about those two brothers. And I was really very much intrigued about their life story. They grew up on army bases behind Iron Curtain, and their father was Ukrainian and their mother was Russian. And they very much were raised with the idea that they in the East were like an island of good people. They should defend themselves against the West, against capitalism and consumerism. And I thought these two guys, they became world champions, heavyweight boxing, and they went to the West. They went to Hamburg, Germany, then to America eventually. They starred in Hollywood films such as Ocean's 11. They were hanging out with Julia Roberts and George Clooney. And then these were like billionaires, and they could easily have stayed in America and lived an easy life, you could say, quiet life if you like. But then they decided to go back to Ukraine and kind of promote democracy. At least that's what I initially thought. And I thought that's a captivating story. Suddenly this boxer becomes a major of the capital of Ukraine and has to defend the city of 3 million people, inhabitants, against, I think, the darkest and deepest evil there is, like Putin and his people. And that initially was the reason for me to go to Kiev in October 2023. And I was trying to get hold of these brothers for like a year already, conducting research and reading all those interviews and reports and watching their matches as well. I'm actually a boxing fan. You wouldn't say for my posture, but I actually like boxing. So I went to Kiev with kind of like an ultimate attempt to try to interview these two guys, or at least one of them. And I was, I wouldn't say stuck in Kiev, but I was spending 2 weeks in Kiev and didn't get hold of them at all. Like, they didn't respond, and his team members didn't respond either. In fact, I actually met up, there was my single appointment with someone who's now here from the embassy, Chitske. That was my single only appointment in Kiev. And as I could not get hold of these guys, as I could not have arranged a meeting, I kind of walked around in the city and I met all kinds of people, but they weren't really very talkative about the Klitschkos, to be honest. But they told their own stories, and somehow my focus shifted. I started to steer away from those Klitschko brothers and more so focused on Kiev initially. Then I went back after 2 weeks, and I remember my publisher saying, like, "Well, Maurits, remember, you're not writing about the war. You're writing about those two brothers." I was nodding because he's my publisher, you know. I was like, okay, but I think my story is very much differing here, and I'm very much moving away from these two brothers. Then Jaap heard about my trip to Kiev by myself, and he asked me to join in February 2024, that is, so about a year ago. And it only intensified the whole process. So not really focusing on these two brothers, but more so, I would say, collecting stories of resilience and resistance, and everyday Ukrainians with everyday means as well. Sometimes it's bread or a jar of gherkins. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the story, but crazy stories about grandma and just fathers and daughters and moms who were fighting that evil that Russia is. And I found that much more captivating and interesting than these two brothers. So I steered away, and now I would say it's not so much about two brothers. And also that ultimate trip to Kiev is not like the end. It seemed to be the end when I went, but it turned out to be just the beginning. And it's not about two brothers, but it's more so about a people that's willing to fight beyond their means even. So that's a shift I made, and it's indeed excellently. And all those things you raised, like moral issues and solidarity and compassion, that's there, but that wasn't the initial reason why I went. Is that an answer to your question? Short answer, yes. We're very short.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, it started, I think, much earlier. I just finished, you never finish, but 20 years of photography in the Middle East. I saw the rise and fall of ISIS, and I saw what demons can do to society. They can kill people with pleasure and really enjoy it. And I saw the same thing slowly coming to Ukraine. You know, you saw the resistance. You know, I know the mechanism of Russia because they bombed me in Grozny, they bombed me in Aleppo. And so I know the expansions that Russia wants, and Ukraine was definitely on their agenda. I was 1 day late. I arrived 1 day after the beginning of the full-scale invasion in Kiev. And my initial plan was to just be in Kiev and see it being surrounded by the Russians and just see what happens. Just sit it out. It takes a week, a month, a year. It didn't happen, as we all know. So I went to Odessa. I just wanted to see the country. And I came to the beach and people were filling sandbags and an opera singer was like guiding. And it was like pure poetry. And I thought, well, you know, I can write not with words as my friends can, but I can write with light. So let's try to capture some of this poetry into images and make pictures that will keep people awake on the other side of the world. Just if you show them a picture, as you know, a picture can just stop time. So it's a great way of writing history. But it's also something that brings you in instant seconds into a place that you've probably never been. But you will recognize so much of the situation that it will just keep you awake again and again. And then this was the first trip, and I'm at my 11th trip now. Usually like a month. I try to dig into what's happening to Ukraine and to its people, and bravery, suffering, everything comes together in one picture, and then I show it to you. And you told me it just tells you everything that's happening there. And that just keeps me coming. There's no reason to stop, since you don't want this to happen to anyone else in the world. So it's like you say, a moral compass. You can make a difference, so do it. Yeah.
So you were actually both in Aleppo and in Grozny. Yes. Jesus. I came here for the first time in 2010, and I was looking for space, vast space, in order to write a novel, which I wanted to set in. And since we don't have that in the Netherlands, we only have skies, but not space. I looked in Spain and in Germany, but nowhere I found the space I needed, and I thought of Ukraine. And then I came here on the East Bank, and I traveled with a Cossack called Yevgeny, and I asked him, can you take me, show me what's left of the remains of the steppes? And he said, well, yeah, of course, here's your horse, it's called Pushok. And he took me on horseback, and I didn't know how to drive a horse, never done it before, but in the end of the day, I never, what say I done? Drive, oh sorry, yeah, I was looking for the speed pedal. No, but, and at the end of the day, I drove 50 kilometers on horseback. I rode, and Yevgeny, then we sat near a fire, and he said, you, my friend, you are now honorary Cossack. So that's what I am. I am a honorary Cossack, and I'm very proud to bear that title. But the funny thing was that while we were driving the whole day, he just asked me questions about Europe, about Brussels, about NATO, and I thought, what is his interest in that? And this is what happens all the time when you speak to normal Ukrainians. They have very high moral standards and about big ideas on open society, on democratic values, and I mean these are discussions I never have in the Netherlands, never. So for me that's very inspiring, and that's what this whole war is about, and it's about a very high standard that you want to maintain, but which is under well, they want to. It's being fought. It's being hoe zeg je dat? Gefrustreerd. Yeah. So that's what I was very inspired by Ukrainians, and when the full-scale invasion started, I was so angry and I wanted to come to fight, but I thought I don't speak the language. I'm too old. I have young children, so I felt very inept. But then I was lucky with a friend like Jaap, who actually started doing something, and it was very easy for me to tap into that. So that's what I do since then, because I'm inspired by Ukrainians, and I think the torch of open society and democracy is held higher here and burns more brightly than in Western Europe. So for me, Ukraine is an example for the rest of Europe.
Thank you. All your stories are so inspiring, and like what it make me think that like small motivations, each of you have your own motivation, have your own story that links you to Ukraine. And like all these small stories, small motivations, actions, big and little actions, they make the whole big picture. Like every action, every step of every individual makes an impact on the society in general. So you all are from the Netherlands, and the full-scale war has been ongoing for already 3 years. And we all remember that at the very beginning, like, the whole world was supporting Ukraine vigorously, and we felt this support like so much. But time passes, and there is this unfortunate for us Ukrainians fatigue caused by the events in Ukraine. And I'd like to ask you, how would you assess the attitude of the Dutch people towards the events in Ukraine? Like has it changed over this period of time? But before getting deep into this question, like I want to take a step back and also pay attention to the importance of negative events to build bridges between societies. And you, Mr. Chabot, you focus in your work, you focus on bridging differences between personalities to make the whole society. So would you say that this full-scale invasion made this contribution into Ukrainian and the Dutch societies know each other better, being more curious about each other? And then how this attitude has changed over the time? What do you feel about it?
It's a very interesting question. I think I read Andrei Kurkov's book, Diary of an Invasion, and his latest book, Our Daily War. And he even says, even amongst Ukrainians, there's a better understanding of what Ukraine identity actually entails and what it is about. So not necessarily confined to Dutch and the Ukrainian ties, but even if I understand his work correctly, and I'm not saying this, I'm not going to explain as a Dutchie Ukrainians about identity, but if I understand his work correctly, there's definitely a strengthening of Ukrainian identity among both East and West within the country itself. Indeed, I think there's a much better understanding of Ukraine and Ukrainians, and there's a surge in Ukrainian literature as well. For example, with Kurkov, but also Zabushko, Oksana Zabushko, I think her name is. My longest book tour, I think it's called. So there's a surge there. There's a better understanding as well. I think people are indeed reading about the history of the country. At the same time, I have to admit, like you say, the fatigue is there. There's no way we can deny that. In my work, for example, I very much directly experienced that. I work for a newspaper, the Volkskrant, 3 days a week. And for example, embarking on this trip, I was trying to pitch an article for both Jaap and me to write about our experiences here, and you would think they deem that they deem the value of it, and they would be willing to have that article published. However, they argue like, oh, we already have so much about Ukraine, and that's the news stories, the news that's unfolding, but not so much an essay or a lengthy article, if you like, about your experiences here. And they argue like, oh, we already have so much about it, and we've got like The Hague is our city for the parliament, the politics, and we've got it every single day, like tenfold of articles. So that fatigueness, I can't really relate to it, but you do feel the fight to keep the story there and keep the attention there, keep the momentum. And that also relates to my personal experiences, moving away from the work, but my personal experiences. I feel like I can't really tell about my experiences here. I mean, you can to some point, but friends are a little bit fatigued as well to some point. They ask you like, what was it like? And it's of course so different from anything you experience in the Netherlands or on holiday, for example. So it's a bit like, I think it's called cosmonaut complex or astronaut complex. You come from the moon and they descend back onto Earth and no one can relate to it. And of course, that's not what we're experiencing, and you're having it much worse. But there is this gap on both the personal side as well as the professional side. Like, people are kind of loosening the ties, I would say, and that's a hard fight, because you feel so motivated and you feel the urge here in this country. Every single conversation you struck up, you want to gain that attention and gain more support as well. If you talk about protect Ukraine, because more support means we can buy more goodies and then we can bring it here and strengthen your army. But that's a very much double-sided battle. Yes, yes. Maybe I should stop there. Give the others a chance.
Yeah, but I think the Russian world or the Russian narrative was always very dominant in the Netherlands. So the Russians always dominated everything about Ukraine. So I think in the mind of most people, and even myself, Ukraine was just part of Russia. And I think that's something that this war really changes. Although I think still a lot of the Russian narrative is still dominant. And I think that's a very long way, but that's why I also think PEN Ukraine and is very important to bring all the Ukrainian authors into the world. But like Gogol is we have a very famous publishing house in a very good one in the Netherlands, Van Oorschot. They have a Russian library. These are all the Russian literature, but also Ukrainian authors are actually in that library as a part of the Russian library. And so I think that's a long way to change. And I think what is still also, and I see a work for all of us, is that for many Dutch, that's just a war happening far away, and it's two countries at war. And people do not realize what Russians are actually doing and how this war is fought and how sadistic it is and how torture is absolutely systematic. And I think for authors, there's a big task to try to convey that in a way that is digestible for the audience, because it's nearly too tough. So when you tell it too much, and that's even with friends or even with I have 3 sons. They say, "Okay, Dad, don't tell us again." So that is the kind of fatigue there is, and it's so we have to be creative, and we all have to be creative how to tell this story again and again.
In the Netherlands, we had an influx of Ukrainian refugees as well, and bit of more optimistic note to a very sad story, but they seem to be they prove to be absolute fantastic people. Actually, they work very hard. They learn the language very quick. I mean, they're model Dutchmen. so I think it's for the Netherlands, it's a very strong and positive influence. Because the reason is sad, but they're absolutely model refugees in the Netherlands. I don't know if you know that, but how many are there? About 100,000? 140,000. Yeah, that's quite a lot. That's quite an influx. So, and my sister, she had a Ukrainian couple in her house for a year, just a room next door, and they became great friends. And within 4 months, they both had jobs. Within 7 months, they both mastered the basics of Dutch language. So that's absolutely amazing. So you should all come to the Netherlands.
No, as I see it, to come back at the fatigue question, is that people just lose interest for Ukraine. I think I see every Ukrainian individual as a unique person. Either it's a soldier in the trenches of Pokrovsk or Bakhmut some time ago, I think if you find the secret to connect to a soul, you will always find an audience to connect to. And then you don't need to relate to again and again to show the war, but you show a person that has a difficult condition, and you just find a way to communicate it. And if you gather this body of work, as I try to do, you make an exhibition which takes like that opens the eyes for like 700,000 people a year. And then you try to do it again and again, and in this way, somehow I'm maybe just too stubborn to believe that people have to, turn their eyes away, because it's not the solution to turn your eyes away. It's the easy solution, but it will never bring a solution. So I just force them. I try to force them to keep looking, and you do this from one person to another. And not about, there's no news related to it, for me at least. It's a person with love that misses very important things. And you, like I said again, you don't want this to happen to your family. So make sure it doesn't happen at all.
This part of volunteering, of your activities in Ukraine is very important regarding the direction of the influence, right? So you come here, you help Ukrainians, you motivate Ukrainians, you inspire Ukrainians. But at the same time, you come back to the Netherlands and you tell the truth about what is going on here. And like it builds these personal bridges between societies. It also helps to fight Russian narratives. It helps to, disseminate the truth around the Europe in general. But as we've just discussed, that there is this fall in interest towards what is going on here. People do not want to see pain. People do not want to admit that these terrible issues are happening for that long, and there is no quick and easy solution here. So you all represent creative people. You are writers, you are photographers, like you're volunteers. What would be your recipes to keep this interest towards Ukraine abroad? Or maybe your general thoughts or personal recipes, or maybe you have these experiences that helped you to keep this interest. Let me start with you, Mr. Wieringa, please.
Well, for me, it's a very simple answer actually, because I can only do one thing right, and that's writing. So I have a column in a newspaper where he's employed, and I write as much about it as I can, just to keep it alive. And for me as well, when I'm back in the Netherlands for a few months, it starts to fade away a little, to my surprise. So I have to keep myself awake as well. So I keep reading and keep informing yourself, right? That's what I tell audiences when I do book readings in the Netherlands. Inform yourself, right? I mean, it's very difficult. The amount of disinformation is so huge. And when I go to schools and I speak to students, they don't inform themselves at all. They just believe what's on TikTok, and that's very, very worrying. They don't think that newspapers are telling the right story. They're very critical about traditional media, which is also very worrisome. So for me, there's only one thing to do, and that's constantly telling the story as I experience it. So that's what I do, and I try to give the best words that I have to the cause that's being fought here. That's what I do. Words. Alphabet. Boring. No, but it's difficult and it's tiresome. But I think it's the most important we can do, actually, to give the best words and the best thoughts on this cause.
Yeah, I think there is a slight change in my approach, I would say. So I think I just handed in my manuscript, in fact, just the day before we took off to Ukraine. And in my case, I deliberately chose to pick out stories that do transmit some sense of hope, I think, and some sense of humor. Suddenly things start to fall apart. But yeah, some sense of humor and some sense of hope. But trying to find the more optimistic and inspiring stories, and steer away a little bit of the horrors and the drama. I think great many people know that. They're aware of that. I wouldn't say I'm cherry picking my narrative, but I'm coming up with another way to kind of find an entrance, and in the end, eventually you'll drag the readers to the same story, and you drag them to the same horror that's taking place, but your entrance to that horror is somewhat different. So your approach, I think, from my personal side, my approach is slightly different from the beginning. It doesn't suffice now to say I'm going to Ukraine and go to the front lines or to Kiev or wherever and describing the scenery, but I came up with an idea or a single individual story or someone I'm following or interviewing over a length of time, and then telling his or her personal story and trying to find that hopeful entrance. So there is, I would say, a change in my approach. Yes, of course.
Yeah. I'd like to add one thing. These book readings and the things Jaap and I do when we address to audiences, in order to get funding for Protect Ukraine. We always address this notion of powerlessness, that people don't feel that they can do anything. And it's, for me, and I think that's one of the big issues that we are trying to look at that with Protect Ukraine, is actually to address that and tell people that they're not hopeless. I mean, in being a good Democrat, it starts. That's the start of the process, and starting to radiate ideas on civil society. That's how you do it. And in the end of the evening, we start collecting money, and people start donating. They want to donate. That's the simple thing they can do. I had these 60 readings for my last novel, and I had a little pot with and I asked people to donate, and it was a bit bigger than this one. And every evening there were hundreds of euros in it, and we bought almost 6 cars. So now maybe that's a bit, 5 cars from donations I got from just euros that people gave to me. So people, they actually want to do something, but they have no way, they have no clue to actually do something. And that's why Jaap's idea was so brilliant, and it actually motivates people to do simple little good things. And it's very inspiring to actually notice that people do want to help if you address them in the right way.
Yeah, that's what we see very much with Protect Ukraine. We get like 10 emails every day of people who want to join us and who want to help. So there's a big urge, and I think what Tommy is saying, in the Netherlands, a lot of people feel powerless. So I think there is a lot of empathy in the Netherlands with Ukraine. So there's a very strong feeling, and we try to keep that awake all the time. And but I am not so much writing, because I'm more like a manager these days, and many things, and a fundraiser. I have to get the money all the time. So I'm mostly trying every time to be creative about how you can get attention from the media, basically. I'm more like a circus director or something than a writer these days, and they will give a little show later, these two. But no, for example, we do a lot with 36th, the 35th, and the 30th Marines. And they are, the 35th and 36th were fighting in Kharkiv, the other side of Kherson. And they asked us, they needed a very silent boat. And because we have a lot of engineers, Art is sitting there in the back. Art, put up your hand. He is in the drone building team. And they built an Aquadrone. They developed it. And they built it. A few weeks ago, we were going to show in the Netherlands that this drone was working. So it is a silent boat and with night vision and everything. It's for logistics, and but then all the television programs wanted to see it, and then you see we get a lot of donations the days after. So we all the time we have to be creative, and to all the things that we do, we have to try to show to the Dutch people, and until now that works very well, and it is really, we have all these people who are going to get married and decide that they don't want any presents, but all guests should give money for Ukraine. So we have all these, and we have ladies who have their 80th birthday and they don't want any presents, but all the money should be for Ukraine. And actually, it was with the Leo Kiev that this people who got married, because they choose the Leo Kiev. That's another organization that's doing awful lot for Ukraine, and but you do both civilians and army, and so we do only army. So we are very simple guys, and but then these people who had their wedding, they had so much money that we, together with the Leo Kiev, we could bring 500 tons, so 500,000 kilos of fishing nets from the sea. The fisherman gave it to us, and we brought it with a lot of trucks to Ukraine, and the army hangs it in the trees, and they catch drones. So we bought this from Dutch fishermen, and it was all donated. And so there is so many people who want to help Ukraine. And we have, for instance, a guy who's 65. He started to drive buses again after his pension, and he gives all the money that he earns, his monthly salary, he gives to us every month, already for more than a year. So I think there are incredible stories of people who want to help your country.
Yes, I think that the changes in Ukraine, the war started in the trenches. It was artillery, it was bullets, and it slowly changed into a completely different scene. That is very important to show to people in Holland, anywhere in the world, but also to politicians, decision makers, who try to support Ukraine. And now, the last November and December, I was in Pokrovsk and even at the front line, and spent some nights in the trenches. And you see you're really haunted by drones, and there's like just very, very little chance to survive if a drone just have you in vision. And I think it's actually developments in the war are you just have to pick them up and keep showing it to an audience, to keep people to the point what's happening in Ukraine, but also to keep their focus and point the right people to the right direction to actually be able to make a difference for the future of the war. And I was actually surprised. I was really hunted by drones 2 times in Pokrovsk. It was really close, and I never realized it would be such a danger. And I was there for 2 nights. Can you imagine if you spend weeks there? The guys who more or less saved my life, they dropped me in a car with a wrap, and they went back to their position. And I'm still in contact with them because I'm very concerned, and they're still doing well. But they are fighting this new enemy, which is under constant development. And this is, for me, also something to address to the audience. And this is also a way to keep attention. And just, it's a race.
Thank you so much for sharing these experiences. And before we pass to the questions from the audience, I would like to express our gratitude again for this conversation. And all the things that you are doing for Ukraine, you are coming here even though you could just live your normal, safe life in your country, but you choose to risk your lives, you choose to be active, you choose to help those who are in need and those who deserve this help, and you also help to fight with the big evil. So your activities, they have not only practical dimension, they also show that there is the good in this world and there is the chance that the evil will not win. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand, please.
Thank you all for a fantastic discussion. I really enjoyed it. I'm Mark van Berg. I'm from Amsterdam. I'm a surgeon, and I'm also inspired by Jaap and Tommy and everyone who works for Protect Ukraine. The Ukrainian people have also stolen my heart. But you're talking about information, and I was just thinking about it. I have 3 teenage children, and they also take all their information not anymore from the normal news media, but they take it, as you say, from TikTok, from Instagram, Facebook. They think is really for boomers, so they don't use that anymore. But so what do you think? Is it the right way to talk to audiences who choose to come to you, or should you maybe go with the newspaper on TikTok? Maybe you're already there, I don't know, but is that maybe the next step to go, to show them what's really going on? And maybe Eddie's pictures should be on TikTok, on, I don't know, to show it to another audience.
So there's several kind of sub-themes there. For the newspaper, there is indeed a very deliberate strategy to target different audiences and age groups. So TikTok, I'm not entirely sure, because it's kind of a dubious platform, I think, nowadays. However, Instagram, that's very much targeting the younger audiences. Podcast is another means to reach different audience than your regular reader of the newspaper. Taking it back to Protect Ukraine, I think we're very much thinking about ways of differing our audience. In our case, just to give a recent example, we're now organizing a breakfast, the 24th of February in Amsterdam, in a very deliberately chosen location, the Keuvel in Amsterdam North, which is kind of a place a lot of youth from Amsterdam hangs out at. And we're also thinking about coming up with a social media campaign. There are other arguments you have to take into account there as well. You don't want the war to be kind of like a social media thing. You want to very much stay away of that. So I think every decision you make, you have to make a very deliberate decision and think about the consequences. But we are indeed diversifying our ways of reaching out to an audience, and it's one way is the theater shows and raising donations, one way is writing articles, one way is Instagram posts, and the other is, for example, the 24th February breakfast for very much directed at the youth. And I think all together is cumulative, and you reach all those different audiences. But indeed, we are re-evaluating our media strategy, if you like. Yes, definitely.
And take their telephones away. That's what I do at home. But it's effective, really. And the funny thing is that in school, I have 2 daughters, 13 and 15. They had to, every day when they come into school, they have to, their telephones have been taken away. And it actually really helped everything in school. The whole atmosphere got better. They actually talk to each other nowadays. So I think that's when you start talking to people, then there's a chance that actually information might be more truthful. But of course, it's very difficult to win against big tech. I mean, and the alliance between big tech and the strong man is very strong nowadays. So it's a fierce battle that we're fighting, not only on the battlefield but also in a political way. And that's a thing that worries me very much, because it's a perfect storm against truth. Okay. Jaap, wil jij nog iets zeggen?
Hi to everyone. My name is Ira, and I'm I would love to share the story. So the friend of mine shared the story about how the foreigners, like not Ukrainians, show the real picture of war in Ukraine. So the foreigners do not believe truly that it like war in a cities, in a real building for people like civilians. The people could be injured or etc. And so they truly believe because they see in the social media that we are living. So we have some, events, some discussions, conferences. We're celebrating birthdays, etc. So we are trying to be normal. Ukrainians truly believe me, and the foreigners who see two pictures when from United 24, for example, when the missile attacks came to the cities, and at the same time they see that how we celebrate in the life. So that truly believe that the war in Ukraine is like blockbuster. So they see our real life, it's like a film. And my question is how to communicate with the countries, with the people from different countries, and explain them not just with these horror pictures that we are struggling and wounded and blah blah blah. So I truly believe that it's annoying a little bit, and for some time when I'm not here, so it's like also a picture. But at the same time, when I woke up from the alarm, and then I decided, oh, that's real life. So how to be in contact with the people and how to explain it's not a blockbuster. It's and it's not far from them. So what kind of the methods, history, how to connect maybe the history and their tradition and their reality to explain better what is going on in real. It's not a film, so we need to be all engaged in this situation and understand what's going on, and it could be next day their reality.
I think very much what Eddie was saying earlier is that he tries to show the soul of people. I think you have very much to show the humans who are in this war and their personal stories, because I think that's something that people can connect to. And what is indeed a problem, what Maurits was saying, is that the newspaper are mostly interested in the big geopolitical story. And I think that it's up to us to try to bring these personal human stories, because that's, I think, really what can touch people. And that's even what we now try to do, because with Protect Ukraine we were very bad in communicating on social media, but that's the kind of thing that we want now to start doing, to show pictures and film that you see actually. And we focus on the army, so it is again the human side of the army, but the armed forces, and that is quite for us. We have to make a kind of translate what the guys at the front are living through to the Dutch audience, because we got a lot of films and pictures of the guys with masks and machine guns and telling something, but that is we have much more to show. Just the little problems they have to get water or to get food, or that they are in the mud all the time. And I think that's what we should show, their human side, and how that they were just also having a job 3 years ago, and now they are there, and evil is coming to them. So that's my idea, that how we should do it. I don't know if you, how do you see it?
I made during my last trip. I made a story about the opera in Kharkiv. Actually, that they are like doing this amazing thing in the basement. That because the whole building is being bombed, and so you can't fill up the usual space with audience. You go to the basements, and you create like a new world there. But all the actors, all of them, they are still there. And I've spent 2 days there, and I saw this amazing world of people making something out of nothing. And in the end, in the evenings, it was fully packed. So it means people still have the need for entertainment, for, as you say, daily things. And this is a story that is beautifully published, and it received beautiful critics. So I think there's so many little ways to get to the soul of someone, and I remember right in the beginning of the war, I was like completely focused on the violence, like you say. I said, "Oh, this is war." And then at some point, a woman turned like 60 or 65, I can't remember. And there was like the neighbors were singing with a little candle and like a piece of cake that didn't look like anything, but it was so touching. And I really love this picture. And if you show it to somebody anywhere, they will immediately recognize this moment. So it is, I think, the secret to make humans, to see the same appreciation.
I think we still have time for two questions.
Hi, my name is Andrei. My question about pacifism in Europe, because we are all looking in the end of the war, and end of the war means commitment from allies of Ukraine to provide security guarantees. And security guarantees means then one day war can come to Europe, because peacekeepers can come to Ukraine, and then the next stage of the war can start. So do you think Europe ready to fight? And what is because it is a key question, because if not, then Ukraine will be always a gray zone, and there would be always not enough capability and readiness actually to accept Ukraine as a European country, as a NATO country, and it's like key question for now for survival of the country, and also to the future prosperity, investments, etc. So, what is your feeling, understanding like Deutsch society?
I wish I could be very optimistic about that and say yes, of course. But we have a problem that we are functioning democracies with a lot of populist tendencies, and they tend to address to their electorate as in a Russian fashion. They radiate Russian propaganda. They radiate disinformation. So that's a big problem. And for instance, as you know, Russian disinformation always picks on existing problems. It doesn't think of. It's not creative. It just picks on something like farmers. Farmers are worried about this superior Chernosem that you have here, which might wipe European farmers out. And the grain production of Ukraine is something which worries our farmers. So populist parties start picking on that. So this is dangerous. And right now in the Netherlands we have an extreme right party which is leading, and it also hampers the idea of Ukraine becoming part of Europe, of part of the European Union or of NATO. So that's a fight that we have to fight in our home grounds. But then again, Ukraine is such a strong example of human resilience, and so inspiring for a big part of Europe as well. So I think in the end, there's no other way, of course. We both know that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about geopolitics, but I think the only way forward is that Ukraine joins NATO. I think the European Union is not so important, but I think NATO, that's all what it's about. And I hope, I'm just, I will hammer it in all the time. I don't see any other solution. And I think in the end, it's the only solution for Europe. And also it will make Europe much stronger. So I think it's very logic. But well, it will be a difficult and long way, but I think that's the only way we can go.
Yes, let's take the last question.
But for me, it's something I'm looking forward to. I think Ukraine will be one of the strongest pillars of NATO. You're very experienced in fighting. You're very experienced in fighting this demonic aggression. So I think it would be the best thing to do for Europe to encroach Ukraine and hold it tight.
I just wanted to add a bit about the previous. So I'm a Ukrainian living in the Netherlands for the last 10 years. And I'm a Ukrainian academic in the Netherlands. And I think what we tried outside my capacity now in working in more policies field, we decided with some other Ukrainian academics and artists, we thought, okay, how to talk about war without war. So we actually were asked by one, the Kiesman, so it's one big organization that works a lot with young people and trying to actually promote a lot of political awareness. And they proposed us, okay, can you do something? And we thought, okay, what we, in the middle of the night, they organized a night show, and we were talking about Maidan, actually. And we realized that all of us, 10 years ago, were students. And then we, of course, left the Netherlands as students as well. But we also remembered how it all started, how did we feel? And then actually we went all the way back 10 years ago, talking to the people who were 20 years old about how it felt back then for us, what we were actually standing for, being also the same students studying international law, basically, or other things in Kyiv Mahila Academy, and reconnecting what personally for us meant to be, for example, active. It kind of allowed us to connect with audience much better because it was also a time of student protest. So actually everybody was about the protest. And then we thought, okay, what if we use protest as a way of a dialogue? And it really worked very well. And then what we also thought about, a lot of Ukrainian artists, but also academics, are being forced to play or expertise or do something without their expertise. So you always put Ukrainian opinion everywhere, but actually not everybody knows what they're talking about very often. So we thought, okay, how do you find this kind of expertise and right way to talk about war, but also about other things Ukrainian might be experts in, like sanctions and other things. So we actually realized that there are a lot of people in Dutch universities who are Ukrainian origin, but they work on sanctions outside the whole, just as their thesis topic, or populism, for example. And then we could organize like a group of experts that could actually give comments, also not just as Ukrainians, but actually as Dutch academics or involved in a Dutch academia. And also what artists thought is that, okay, why do we always have to produce art about Ukraine? So there are also Ukrainian artists in the Netherlands who have been there for quite a while. And they said, what if we actually produce art about decolonization? Like how we actually experience this decolonization, and how to talk about war again without only talking about war. And then I think that is also an art and also sort of an analytical question, because in the end it will come to the war. So the whole conversation will come to the war, but it will actually, I hope, open up people also seeing other parts of Ukrainian identity. And I think that is also important. But this is just reflecting on the question before, how we try, as Ukrainian diaspora, let's say, how we try to engage in dialogue back in the Netherlands.
It's interesting you're saying. I would love to hear more about that actually later on. Also, I think it very much ties in with what was raised earlier on, like you're thinking of different, sort of like you're entering the same building but building a different entrance, right? So I think Eddie said something earlier on about coming up with relatable stories. So you're getting them to the same topic, but you're trying to come up with new devices or new kind of approaches. And very much interested about these Ukrainian academics, and maybe they could help with our breakfast as well, and trying to reach to other audiences. Something that's also on my mind, just to jump in on the question before, it was something that really struck with me was what the soldier told about the 36 Marines. He said to us, like, it is very much a warning to Europe as well and to the Netherlands. First of all, they won't forget you're a very strong ally to Ukraine. And he said, like, well, Russians, they don't necessarily fear what's in front of them. They're more scared of what's behind them. You know, so that was very much an urge I felt like. It's not only about Ukraine, it's also very much a fight that concerns Europe. And another commander said, like, well, there are two main key points that largely overlooked. One is your massive food resources here, your grain resources, and the other is the energy resources. You can't even afford, as Europe, you can't afford to let Russia take that, because we would be in two ways in massive problems and struggles. Also, I feel like, and it was we went to the parliament earlier on this afternoon, and the issue there was raised. You've lost thousands of lives, and there must be some sort of reward. You can't just say, well, there's peace. It's not about peace. It's about safety, guarantees. That's the kind of like the reward of this war. And I'm not sure whether reward is the right way of putting it, but I hope you kind of catch my drift. So there's so much there at stake that's largely overlooked. That's not in the news, but that's also at stake. So yeah, these are just some points that were still in my head about your question, and I very much agree with you. Coming up with new ways. It could be a podcast. We're talking about it as well. It could be with, like Eddie said, like trying to find the opera house in Kharkiv, trying to find new approaches and more relatable stories. Might be something to discuss after as well, and maybe we could work together the 24th of February and make that coalition as big as possible. That's some ideas that are on my mind right now. Anyone else wants to?
Well, thank you again so much for this conversation, and thank you for coming here and enjoying. I hope you found important insights in today's conversation, and we hope to see you at our events again. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's not a question, it's just I'm a doctor and I'm a researcher, and I'm as far from PEN Ukraine as you can only imagine. And I work in a big hospital up the hill. So I just wanted to come to thank you. We don't know, we cannot imagine how many people all around the world are helping us, and that's why we are still here, and you are doing a great job, and I want to thank you very much. Thank you.
This was a podcast explaining Ukraine by UkraineWorld, a multilingual media outlet about Ukraine. This was a conversation held by PEN Ukraine and UkraineWorld with the Dutch authors and volunteers who came to Ukraine to help the Ukrainian army. The event was held on the January 30th, 2025 at PEN Ukraine premises in Kyiv. Our guests were Jaap Scholten, Wieringa, Maurits Chabot, and Eddie van Wessel. The event was moderated by Anastasia Hrasemchuk, UkraineWorld's Deputy Editor-in-Chief. My name is Volodymyr Yermolenko. I am the Chief Editor of UkraineWorld. UkraineWorld is brought to you by Internews Ukraine, one of Ukraine's largest media NGOs. Let me remind you again and again that you can support our work at patreon.com/UkraineWorld. We really need your support now because our media is increasingly relying on crowdfunding. You can also support our volunteer trips to the frontline areas where we help both soldiers and civilians. You can support these trips via PayPal, ukraine.resisting@gmail.com. Stay with us and stand with Ukraine.